Okay, we'll try this again. Um, I'm Donna Thomas George, and this time, instead of talking about the book, I've had some people ask me about how I went about writing it. And I thought this was kind of odd because most authors don't get asked something like that until, they've written 25,000 gazillion books, and then somebody wants to know how they did it. In the 90s, I read every book there was on how to read. Or how to read. I'm sorry, how to write. I already know how to read, how to write. And how to write books, how to write essays, how to write short stories, you name it, I read it. I started out writing little essays, short little essays on little incidents I could remember from my childhood or married life or something like this. And I gave them to my dad and my mom, to read, and my sister. Everybody loved them, and thought they were pretty cool. And I thought, well, that's great. I don't see how I'll ever write a novel. I had been told, you should write a novel. I see that in your future. I had gone to an astrologer. Yeah, I see a novel in your future. And I'm like, yeah, right, you do. And that was like 25 years ago. And so in the 90s, after I had written several small things, I even tried writing articles, and that wasn't for me. The little essay and little story things, I ended up saving. I thought those things could be something my kids could read later. I had read that you need to have a routine. Absolutely, you must have a routine if you're going to write. You should sit down at a certain time of day, you should sit down every day, and you should write. So what I did for practice was I started a journal, and it was also for therapy too. And I went down at the end of every day, and around the same time, and sat down on my word processor and began to write. And basically it was a cathartic kind of thing. It was like me complaining about everything and everyone that irritated me that day. It was much easier to do that than to scream and yell or gripe and complain to people who'd shut me out. So, I did that, and every now and then a little morsel of gold would pop into that. And so I did that for about 15 years, and every year I would have 3 notebooks about this, the binders, about twice this wide, the 4-inch binders. 3 of those for each year. That's how much I wrote. And I have cabinets full of journals downstairs that my kids are like, I don't want those. And I'm thinking, oh, that's wonderful. I would have given anything if my parents had written something I could read after they were gone, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that you can get into a mode, if you want, where you just sit down to write at a certain time, and it sort of like trains your brain to start thinking. Now, when it comes to writing, that just simply doesn't work for me. I don't do that. This is the finished product of typing and printing of Echoes of Time that I did. It's the only, well, it's not the only print. I printed out some drafts and things of the earlier version and gave them to 2 or 3 friends to look at, but I ended up changing so much of it later it doesn't even resemble this. But when I got all done, I ended up printing it out, not double spaced like they were talking about in books. Oh my gosh, it must be manuscript spaced and it must be all this. I didn't do that because it was a waste of paper and a waste of ink, and I wasn't going to end up sending it to a publisher anyway. And the publishing industry has changed so much that you can, indie publishing, you can publish your own your own stuff. You don't have to wait and see. You don't have to query. You don't have to wait and see if somebody will actually pick up your synopsis or your query from a slush pile and take a year to look at it and say, yeah, well, maybe we might look at it. You send us 2 or 3 chapters and so on and so forth, and then it takes 2 or 3 years to get one book going that you might have spent 2 years writing. And so what I did was I just put it like this, and I took it to, I wanted somebody to read it that didn't know me and could maybe pick out the things in it that were not good, didn't flow, all of this other stuff. So my husband knew a retired college professor, and he had taught for 30 years, and he goes, I will ask him if he will read it. And I said, okay. So this is what I took to him. And he read it a couple of times and called, and it took him about a month. And he called and said, I'm done reading. I just want you to know that all the characters, I love all the characters. They're wonderful. And I'm going to do some more reading on it. I want to read it again, and then we'll come over and talk to me about it. So we went over there, and the first thing he said to me was, do you sit down and write 8 hours a day? And I said, no, I don't. No. And he had come from Maine and actually knew Stephen King, who, as we all know, sits down and writes at his typewriter probably more than 8 hours a day, slaving over his work, and he can turn out just tons and tons of work. This is not me. So I'm going to talk about how I did what I did. I sat down. First, if you're going to write, you need to read a lot of whatever it is that you're interested in, that you want to write about. Well, I read a lot. Just, it's like an addiction to me. I read constantly. So I thought, this shouldn't be too hard to do. I'll sit down and I'll write about a woman and a man, getting together, and there'll be some conflict in it, and there'll be this and there'll be that, and and I'll just see. One of the things was to actually get it done, to actually sit down and finish what you started. It had been kind of on a bucket list of mine. So I sat down and I started writing, and in my mind there were all these people that were reading it. And I was thinking, well, what are they thinking about this? What are they thinking about that? And my characters sounded wooden, and it was a mess. And then I thought, and I'd read this somewhere, that all characters are part of yourself. And I thought, well, I could use myself as the woman, a version of me, maybe a younger version. But what I wanted to write was, everybody in a love story or romance or something like that is generally in their 20s or early 30s, something like that. The heroine that goes and kicks butt, or she gets whisked off, or what's that. And I thought, I'm in my 50s and I can't find anybody who's written anything that where somebody would whisk away somebody like me. So hey, I'm gonna write something. So I kind of based it on that, and from then on, I used myself. And I ended up using a lot of my life in it. And they'll warn you to not get carried away and put a lot of your life into a character. But it did happen. with me, and I ended up writing my husband into it. And then I had to write him out of it, because if you're going to have a romance and meet a man, you can't go dragging your husband along. So I kind of wrote him out of it by him having a heart attack. And this book, since I really didn't know what I was doing and I was kind of experimenting with it, it took probably a year and a half to get it together. I don't think the next one, now that I know what I'm doing, is going to take that long. Well, within that year and a half, my husband ended up having a massive heart attack. And he was in the hospital when it happened. And he ended up having what they call a widowmaker heart attack. And the next day, they saved him that day. But he ended up having some experiences that kind of led to him sort of believing a little bit about, some of the odd paranormal things I would talk about. And so in a way that I got to thinking the other night, that was kind of weird. But the cardiologist the next day said the only thing that saved the man's life was the fact that the vein that usually plugs up is a large vein. And for some reason, large veins, they can't say. The person just dies of a heart attack. His happened to be small, and that's the only reason why I lived. So I thought, well, maybe I should be careful in the future about what I write. Who knows? Maybe it makes it come true. I don't know. But anyway, I started working with the aliens. I thought that would be cool. I love UFOs. This would be awesome. And the one thing I took from the 4 novels that I had started back in the 90s that are laying somewhere down in the basement in a drawer was one scene where a woman walked out on a deck with a dog, and a ship came. And it was a particular kind of ship, and she ended up, well, it's in the book, and I thought, I like that scene, so I'm going to use that scene. The only difference is I am going to make the dog not a little tiny Toto-like dog. I'm going to make the dog one of ours that we had. And so there I had it. But our dog named Emily, that was half cocker, half spaniel, and I put her in it. And she ends up, the aliens and stuff end up, they go on a ship. It's kind of a long story. It ended up being pretty convoluted. And I had a script downstairs that was kind of a convoluted story about government conspiracy and time travel and some other things like that, and it got out of hand, and I thought, I'm confused in my own book. But this book didn't seem to flow like that. So I'm going to tell you what I did. What I did was I decided, okay, I'm not writing for an audience. I'm writing for the book. I'm writing for me. This book is not going to, I'm not showing this to anybody. So therefore, I'm going to do whatever I want to do in the book. And that's exactly what I did. So one thing flowed to another. I needed a car. The aliens had provided a really nice car for this lady. So I ended up going in the bedroom one night, waking my husband up, and he's like, what? And I'm like, what's the most expensive car in the world? And he's like, I don't know, Google it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I could do that. So I go out and I Google the most expensive car in the world. And of course, all these foreign cars come up, and somehow, who knows, it's synchronicity played so much a part in this book of different things to give me ideas. You wouldn't believe it if I could remember all of them and tell them to you. So a link pops up to a 1969 Dodge Super Bee, which was exactly what we had when we were dating. And so I put that car in the book along with the dog. And I also made the dog a talking dog once it got off the ship, because when they went up there to talk to the aliens, they take the dog away and take her to some little the specimen room, and she spends time with one of the gray aliens and this and that. And so, Danny talks to them about what they want her to do and so on and so forth. And she gets off the ship, and the next day her dog is talking to her, and she faints. It's like, you didn't just talk to me, did you? Don't tell me you just talked. You did not just talk to me. Do not tell me that you talked to me. And it was, okay, I won't. And she faints. So when she comes to, the dog is laying there staring at her. And it kind of goes from there. And I bring it up to my husband, and he's like, you can't put a talking dog in a book. Nobody's going to read that. Nobody's going to like that. Just because you and I make dogs talk doesn't mean that anybody else does that. And I said, yeah, I think they do. And I'm going to use it. I'm going to do it anyway. And it ended up being very, very fun, because I got to bring her back to life and make her talk and things like this that, I just know her. We knew her so well that each one of us could speak for her. Like if she was staring at you, the other one would be talking in the background, and it was just like she was talking to you. But I ended up putting her in there, and so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to use a setting, which I had lost my mother to cancer, so she had been on hospice, and we had talked quite a bit. And if you've ever had anyone on hospice that you spent time with, a parent or somebody close to you, it's funny how things like that will bring out problems that happen maybe between the two of you, and resolve them, and you find out things that you didn't know, that you understand now why they did something they did that you've been holding against them for a long, long time. So I decided that I would use that setting in my mother's house, in my mother's place where she lived, and the dog, Emily, and the heroine, Danny, would spend time in a 4-hour period waiting on her mother, because her mother had slipped into kind of a coma, and kind of waiting for her to pass on. Well, in this amount of time, there are quite a few flashbacks, and I didn't know whether flashbacks were a good thing to use or not, but I used them. And by doing things like that, and really, really putting parts of my life in the book that I could remember, there's comedy in the book, because our life was, we would just had a lot of funny people in our family, and so it had that aspect of it. You're going to find lots of emotions in it. The book will make you laugh, the book will make you cry, the book will make you feel happy, horrified, all sorts of emotions that just kind of run through it. And so what I'm trying to say is that I didn't use any kind of a template, I didn't use an outline, I didn't use anything. I just turned it over to the characters. And once I had Danny and her husband, who we do have time travel, so he would show up. He would either show up through time travel, or show up through, as maybe somebody would say, a ghost or an image or something like that we'll usually see sometimes in our minds of someone that's passed on. So before long, my grandmother starts showing up, and many things, as she's going on her adventure through the West that the aliens have sent her on to meet this man. Many things pop up in the book, and that seem unreal. And I have put in there, this is based on my life, couched in fiction. See if you can figure it out, what part is fiction and what part is real, and all of that. And I will tell you that a lot of the scenes that show my grandmother talking or coming to me or something like that, these were dreams that I had, that I kept a dream journal. And so I'd wake up and I'd think that was a really strange dream, and I'd write it down. So I kind of used those and expanded a lot on some of them. And I also, once you get a book going and you get a bunch of characters together and you just let them kind of take over the book, they're going to talk to you. And you don't really have to think up a lot of stuff on your own. In fact, what I had planned, they were not going to go for it. It was like, no, we're going to do it this way. Yeah, but I wanted to go this way with the book. No, let's do it this way. So finally I gave up and I just followed what they wanted me to do. And it just flowed from then on. And then I would take breaks from it, maybe a couple of days at a time, maybe a week at a time, maybe more. And then I would pick it up again, because they will torture you. Your characters will torture you. You will be thinking about them all the time when you're not writing. Little things, but that's okay, because little things will happen. They happened in my life that it was almost like they were little nudges from the universe. You could use this, you could use that. And you kind of, in your subconscious, you have a lot of things that you hear or you see that just kind of sit down there like compost stuff, and then it gets filtered up into your mind as you're typing along. You don't even realize it. And if you get into the zone while you're typing, it just comes to you, and you type it out. And the one thing I will tell you is, don't stop to edit. Just when you're starting something, just write it down. Whatever comes, write it down. Remember, you can always go back and you can take out and you can add in. And therefore, you get a chapter at least. And so this is how I did it. And before long, like I said, I had these characters, and they pretty much took over. And I see that I've got a flashing light here. Let's see, what does that mean? It means that I'm running out of battery, so I talked the way through it. So basically, just sit down, write what comes to your mind. Forget the books. Forget what they say you should do. Do what you feel is right, and then go back and read. And I guarantee when you go back and you start reading on these, you're going to figure out other things to add to it, and maybe you'll find some things you want to take out of it. And in my case, I found so much that I wanted to put into the book that I had to cut it off at a certain point, and there's more to come. So I made it into a series. Now, the normal amount of a novel is 86,000 words. So if you've hit 86,000 words, you've done good for a novel. I was aiming for 250,000 per book, because of just all the things that I wanted to say in it. And I pretty much almost hit that number before I decided I better cut it off at this point. So I will, what will I do? Well, I can make a second video if you have questions on this one. And this video is directly made for Monty, because he had some questions about it. And I probably didn't answer one of them. This probably didn't help you a bit. But if it did, and you want to know anything more specific, now that we're on Facebook together, just send me a message and I will try to answer that. Probably better, I don't know whether it's better to do it this way or better to do it, you know, typing, but this gives me a lot of extra ideas that, you know, a lot is lost through typing. And I see I'm really running out of battery right now. So I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm on my own right now, so you're going to have to see me get up and turn off the thing. So we'll see how this goes, Monty, and we will talk later, okay? All right, bye. Oh no. How much of it is lost? Ooh, it's still recording. Let's see. This function is currently not available. What do you mean it's not available? Turn the damn thing off. Okay, I know how to turn it off. Power.